do that. Okay. And so this webinar is the preparing classroom materials, and we're doing this webinar series in partnership with the Visual Aid Volunteers of Florida, as well as the American Printing House for the Blind. So we hope that you all have been benefiting from these sessions. I know a lot of you have been participating kind of all along with us, which is awesome to see that. So thank you again for joining us. So our materials for this, we do have a handout that I just posted this morning. And so if you want to go ahead and look at that, that is on our website under this session. So that handout is available if you want the PDF of the presentation that we'll be doing. And then, as I said earlier, the recording will move, it will be on the past events page of our website as we move over to that. Okay, and so for the in-service credit, we do give in-service credit for teachers who are looking for renewing their teacher certification, and then we also have ACV or AP credit available as well. So you need both the opening and the closing code for that certificate that comes out that you'll get through your email. And so our opening code is classroom. So classroom. I'm gonna type it in the, oh, make sure I change my settings here. Okay. And so our presenter today is Lucia Hasty. She presented for us last week on tactile graphics, and she comes to us from the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, and she has extensive experience in our field and with tactile graphics and BANA and all kinds of things. So she's super knowledgeable, and we're really fortunate that she's doing these sessions for us. So with that, I am going to let her go ahead and share her presentation.
Okay, I can't share my screen.
Share? Okay,
no, it says the host is disabled.
Ah, okay. All right, let me change that. That's one of those tricky default settings that thinks it's being so smart, but it just makes it harder for us. So that should let you share now.
All right.
There we go. Perfect.
Welcome, boy. There's a bunch of you. It's great to see so many of you I know. That's what happens when you're an old TVI. I guess you know lots of people from a lot of places. Greetings from Colorado and another post-hailstorm craziness here. I am today going to talk about tactile graphics and producing daily classroom materials. And if you notice on the opening slide, there is a theme of time. And time is the hardest thing when you have tactile graphics produced for a student who needs his classroom materials just right away. I bet there's not a single one of you who has not walked into a school and had someone say, oh, I need these graphics for biology test this afternoon, or I need this set of tactile maps for opening a new social studies unit that we're starting tomorrow morning. As a transcriber, if you're an individual transcriber, no doubt you've been told that book is needed yesterday or as soon as possible because the student just moved into the district, or the student rearranged the classes and has a different teacher and a different textbook. For whatever reason, all of a sudden you need to do this. So we all get this wide-eyed look that knowing that we can't possibly meet the students' needs as quickly as we would like to be able to do. It's a daunting task, that's for sure. So what we're going to talk about today is some strategies for success. So how can you get these classroom materials done as quickly as possible? And I realized when I wrote the description that in the description I didn't say anything about the fact that we were talking about tactile graphics and getting those done quickly. So I'll talk a little bit about both graphics and regular classroom materials as well. So there are basically 5 really important strategies that'll get you where you need to be in meeting students' needs. I'll go through them real quickly and then we'll go through them in depth. The first thing is to be prepared. The second thing is to think about adaptables. You need to embrace technology. Be selective in what you do and agree to do. And also encourage invested staff. So as any good scout would know, you need to be prepared. You need to know what your curriculum topics are. And in preparing for this, I looked at Florida's curriculum as compared to the Common Core standards, just to see what kinds of things students are expected to do. You need to have your supplies available and ready and haul them with you into that school. You need to pre-make any master graphics that you can possibly make, and then maybe make reference sheets. I'll explain a little bit more what I'm talking about. Your curriculum, and in case you don't know what the Florida state standards are for your students, the URL is on the screen and it should be in your handout. You also need to look at those and see. So if you have, for instance, a 6th grader in math, they are going to be expected to model and solve problems involving 2D and 3D figures. Does your student know how to do that kind of comparison? You need to make sure that you've prepared them to do that before they're asked to do it, as opposed to just handing them a worksheet that has 3D figures on it and they don't know quite how to do with it. They're expected to draw polygons in a coordinate plane. So now we're talking about graph paper with the numbers on it for the coordinate plane, and a way for the student to go about drawing. And so you'll need to be able to figure that out. But being prepared and understanding what it is that your 6th grader is going to need to be able to do in math are really important. Even 3rd graders are in Florida expected to collect, represent, which means show and write and show, represent and interpret numerical and categorical data. So look at those standards for each one of your students for each one of those grade levels to figure out which tools they need to know how to use. Do they need to know how to use a Braille ruler, a compass, a protractor? What is it that they need to do in order to participate in that? So that's a real important part of being prepared. This is a shot of my what I wish that my box of supplies looked like. It's a little messier than that. But I keep my tactile graphic supplies in a crate, and I have a bunch of folders that identify the textures that are in those folders that it's standing up. But if you're going to go if you're itinerant and you're going in and out of schools, you'll want something probably a little more portable than this crate, something smaller. The craft stores, Michael's is the one I go to most often, have lots of wonderful scrapbooking stuff. It's all 12 by 12, 12 inches by 12 inches. So Braille paper fits in it, and that's really nice. But they have boxes that are square and probably about 3 inches thick that are great for taking your stuff from one school to the next, just the stuff that you need for that student. So the folders that I have textures that are a quiet, soft background for area textures, medium textures, loud or strong area textures, and then I have materials for lines. I have Brailleables, self-adhesive Braille sheets for making labels, and various kinds of cardboard for making different thicknesses of whatever the area is that I'm showing. The other folders I have master graphics. I have a bunch of maps of the U.S. Some have state boundary lines, some don't. And some are just outlines of the whole United States. But anyway, a full range of those kinds of things without labels so that I can label what I need to do. You might need anatomy or body diagrams that are blank because you might need to fill in if you have a student who's taking anatomy or a science, middle school science fair often has a lot of anatomy in it. So you might need to fill in the different organs in the body or the different veins and arteries when you get there, but an outline of the body itself. I have a box that has point symbol supplies in it. Things that I can very quickly and easily put on. But being prepared is just half the battle there. The other thing is Xyrons and anything else that's sticky. If you don't know, Xyron is a sticker maker machine, and they apparently are going to become extinct. They're getting harder and harder to find. So if you find any and the refills, buy them because who knows when they're going to be around. They're wonderful little machines that makes everything sticky very, very quickly. You don't have to sit around and wait for glue to dry. You don't have to mess with glue, but having a Xyron with you is a handy thing to have as well. Here's some of the kinds of things that you can get. This is some APH Braille Transcribers kit. US Maps, they have several of these transcribers kits, US Maps. And as you can see, they're both print, which you would use for a large print student or a dual media student, and Braille, embossed Braille. And there are various configurations of the outline maps. Outline maps of the U.S. There also is another transcribers kit for countries and continents. There's one for math as well. There's one in the catalog that's for the central states that has the maps of just the state and then where they fit in that central area. There, APH used to have, and I'm not sure what's happening, but they're all out of stock. They used to have one of each region of the country. So it'd be good to watch and see, you know, what the deal is. Right now, the central region is the only one they have. They don't have the southeast, which is what you would need if you were looking at studying within your state. You might need to make reference sheets. An example, if you have a map of the United States, there's only room in most of the states, not even all of them, to use the official postal abbreviation, the FL for Florida, for instance, CO for Colorado, just the two letters, two cells. And so what you might need to do is to do a full reference sheet. It's 2.5 pages, by the way, of every single state and their abbreviation. So if you put the abbreviation of the state, like FL, space, and you write out Florida, space, and then you put Tallahassee. And so if you have that available for the student to always have reference for whatever part of the country they're looking at, just to let you know where that is, where that information is in the BANA guidelines and standards for tactile graphics. I assume everybody has a copy of that, right? If you don't, you need to contact Liz and say we need a copy of that because FIMC has a bunch. In the back in the appendix, it's Appendix C. There is a list of all of the official abbreviations for states, provinces in Canada, and countries all over the world. I never knew there were official postal abbreviations for countries. You can do those reference sheets on permabraille, which is sort of like thermoform paper. And you can put it in your Braille writer. You can use it with a slate and stylus. You cannot run it through an embosser. It will jam it. It won't go through a regular embosser. You could do it on thermoform paper and bind it if it's appropriate so that the student always has those reference sheets. When you start looking at consumable materials, and especially for younger kids, you want to have things that, number one, are already sticky or easy to attach. Number two, that sort of have interesting textures, interesting things to be touching. Think about little kids and counting. You could have just a bunch of circles and they had to count the circles, but whoopee, that's not too exciting. What if they were counting pumpkin, something that's pumpkin shaped or something that's star shaped? That's so much more interesting for them. These little cruising cap things, I discovered, because I drink a lot of coffee, at a drive-through coffee place. They stick this on top of the hole in your carry-out coffee, and they come in a package of 250 of them, and they're different themes, a lot of different themes. And the color is not so important for Braille readers, most Braille readers, some Braille readers it is, but the shapes are real interesting, and the colors are interesting to the other kids in the class as well. And they're not expensive, like you get 250 of them for $5, and they have all kinds of different themes, but they're great for just sticking on things. They're about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Some of them are closer to an inch, but they're great for doing math worksheets, for doing all kinds of things. Other things that I have handy for consumable materials for lots of point symbols are a lot of sewing notions. Not too many people sew anymore, so garage sales are a great place to find these, and scrapbook embellishment things. Snaps, things that you find on clothes, snaps, buttons, brads, balsa wood shapes, foam shapes. APH has a ton of stickers that have numbers and letters and point symbols and shapes. They have all kinds of stickers that you can use for very quick production for younger kids. The other thing that is easy for kids to use is the color coding labels that you can get in stores. I always call them Avery dots, but you can't look them up like that. I tried. They're called color coding labels, little circles that are different colors. Okay, games and puzzles. At one point, there was a committee that was working through APH looking at trying to come up with some guidelines for K through 3 and the kind of thing of materials. And one of the things they said was that you don't do crossword puzzles and word searches and that kind of stuff. I completely do not agree with that, because the students that I've had love being able to do those kind of things. Some kids like them, some kids don't, but then that's the same with non-Braille readers as well. But if crossword puzzles are a big thing in their classroom, get a Braille Scrabble board, and you can set up crossword puzzles quickly and easily with that. For word searches, if you've brailled one of those and then you put that on top of a rubber mat like you use for tooling, or on top of the Draftsman or anything that has a rubber mat, and the student can use a stylus or a pen or anything to just sort of poke a hole where they found that word and mark the word that they found. If Sudoku is something that the kids like to do, there's one in the STEM binder, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes where that one is. Exceptional Teaching has a bunch of them. They have individual sheets that are there, but to those games and puzzles, if in the classroom the teacher says, okay, so when you finish your math worksheets, you can choose something fun to do. And these kinds of things are in the classroom that kids can choose. And if the Braille reader does not have things that are fun for them to do, other kids get to do fun things, but then the Braille reader is left out. And that's not fair. That's not equitable in any way whatsoever. If you need immediate graphics with your students, there are a number of things that are great tools for producing immediate graphics. And you can do it for the student. The classroom teacher can do it. The classroom aide can do it. Volunteer, anybody who might be very close by can help just draw something real quickly. The sensational blackboard is one. I don't know if you've seen that. It sort of was designed to replace the old Sewell raised line drawing kit. And Ann Cunningham, who's a tactile artist, is the person who sells this through Sensational Books. The APH Draftsman and the Tactile Doodle are great, quick graphic kinds of things. A comparable product to that is a company called Easy, and they have something called an intact sketchpad. And it's very much like the Draftsman, not quite as heavy, but it's pretty much the same as the Draftsman. But those are great ways for immediate graphics, and you can get other people to help get those done immediately for your student. Okay, I'm going to stop right here and see, are there any questions about what I've covered so far?
We haven't had any in the chat, but people might be typing. Or if you would like to raise your hand, you can also ask a question verbally. We can give you the mic.
Okay. So the next group of things that will help you get classroom materials done for students in a reasonable amount of time is to think about adaptables. And I think I made that word up, I'm not sure. There are a number of teaching aids that are out there that are already made, that are already produced, that you can adapt for your students' particular content, curriculum content. On the left, there is a picture of the Tactile Anatomy Atlas from APH. It's cool because it's thermoformed, and so it's got Braille and print in it, so you can tell where you are. But if your student is doing anatomy stuff, and that you need that as a reference, make sure that you have that available in the classroom and hopefully marked so the student can find the page pretty easily without you necessarily having to be there. There are times when you need to add different labels on there, or the student's job is to tell where all the different organs in the body are, for instance. The Xyron sticker maker things have a cartridge that has repositional, which means like a sticky note, sticky stuff. So you can make your own sticky notes out of whatever you need to. You could add labels by using a Xyron, using an index card, make your label and Xyron it, and you can stick it on there, and it'll peel back off if you use the repositional ones. You can also I found some index cards. I was really sort of surprised. Some 3x5 index cards that had a sticky strip across the back, just like a sticky note, but they were index cards. They hold Braille wonderfully. So look for that in your store as well. On the right is a picture of all kinds of things, and they're all APH products. So we're not talking about depleting your entire school budget for the year because the federal quota money can help you get this kind of stuff. There are tons of teaching aids that are already available from APH that can take care of doing some of the things that your teacher is going to hand you a worksheet and say, I need this diagram of solar system. Well, they already exist. So if you've planned ahead, if you've looked at your students' curriculum at the beginning of the year, I know you're busy, you got lots of stuff, you have too many kids on your caseload, but take the time to do it. It'll help you with your sanity throughout the year with all those kids that are way too many on your caseload. I always had too many kids on my caseload too, I understand that. Here's another example. This is the human skeleton. And you get, with this kit from APH, I get no kickback from APH, by the way. You get a skeleton, plus you get a diagram, and you get all the labels. It's really sort of a fun thing. And there's another diagram, and this comes from Tactile Vision Graphics, which is actually in Canada. They make all kinds of real fun things. But there are just tons of things out there, and so you just need to look. Another good place to get diagrams that you can download quickly, and if you have, you can print them and then puff them if you have a capsule capsule paper system, like a Piaf or a swell form machine or the old tactile image enhancers. If you have an embosser that will emboss that will emboss your graphics. Um, that will work. Or if you're just going to do it by hand and, you know, quickly do a collage kind of thing, the Tactile Graphic Image Library at APH is continuing to add great graphics to it. So that's another place that you can go about getting it. Soon there are several others, several other libraries you can get things from too. Okay. It's really important that you embrace technology. Almost all of the new embossers will emboss graphics, good graphics. The older embossers, if you use QuickTact, which is free from Duxbury, you can emboss simple graphics. Not anything as complicated as the skeleton, for instance, but more simple things. Things like geometric shapes, flags of countries, simple outline kinds of graphics. But most of the new embossers will, within the last 4, maybe 5 years, will emboss high resolution graphics. If you have a student who's studying something for which there may be models, whether it's biology and it's insects or parts of a plant, or whether it's any kind of anatomy kind of thing, and they're studying vision and hearing, and you need a model of the eye or a model of the ear, that is something that's tangible the student can work with. Instead of trying to do this with a 2D diagram, check with your local community college or your local university and find out if they have a model that you can borrow just for the length of time that the student has this unit that's going up. That's so much better than you trying to produce a graphic and your student having to try to decode and understand a tactile graphic of a complicated system. Another area of a technology that we really need to get better with in our field is audio-tactile. And they're becoming more and more of those. And let me show you a few of them. APH has an interactive US map with a talking tactile pen. Now this pen is made by a company called LiveScribe. This happens to be an Echo, which is one of the models of LiveScribe pens. And when you touch something, the map itself, which like folds in half, that's what that crease down the middle is. And when you touch Florida, it says capital is Tallahassee. You touch it again the second time, it says the population of the state is blah, blah, blah. Touch it the next time, and it gives you more information. And it does that for every single state. And so that's already programmed to do that. And again, that's another APH product. This is an Echo Smart Pen. You can buy one of those, not necessarily programmed to deal with the map, but you can buy one of those. It's great for older kids. There is a pen, and there's a camera in the very end of the pen and that little nib, and there is also a little recorder in it. So when you write something with the pen and you have your recorder on, whatever the lecture, if the teacher is lecturing, or there's some learning situation, there's something to record, all the student really needs to do is they can just either write a number or an X or whatever, and then when you go back with the pen and touch that particular place, the recording jumps to what was being said at that place. So you use the special paper. The pen remembers where you were what was being said when you were at that spot. And it's great for taking notes. A lot of kids at the college level are using this. Both tactile readers and non-tactile readers are using it as the thing. But there are a lot of interesting creative things that you can do, and especially for older kids, with an Echo Smart Pen. For younger kids, there's a similar thing, and this is a sound page, and it comes, you can get it with the On the Way to Literacy materials, and that's what it was developed for. But it has a little, you can't tell, but up in that top left corner, there's a loop there. And so you can attach it in a notebook or to some kind of a binding and have it in there. And it has three fairly short little, you can record up to 3 different things on it, but you can use that for younger kids in a lot of interesting different ways. We probably ought to do a technology course. I hadn't thought about that. Do not ever Braille a table of elements. There are some very, very good ones already out there, and you don't really need to go through the hassle of trying to Braille all that information. APH has one, and this one, Touch Graphics put together, and they sell it in a stem binder, and stem binder has all kinds of interesting things in it. It uses an Echo Smart Pen. The one that APH has is all tactile, it's all Braille. There are several of them around. So that's another thing that you don't have to produce because they exist already. And if you plan ahead and pay attention to what it is your student's going to need, you can probably get one of those and have it available when the student needs it. Stem binder, there's a video about what's all in the stem binder, and it's produced by Touch Graphics. They're also the company that made the Talking Tactile tablet, which came out some years ago, and right now there's a new one in development. But the Talking Tactile tablet has is an audio-tactile thing, and it has one of the things it has is World Atlas, and the picture on the right, lower right of the screen is showing one of the pages, one of the sheets from the atlas, and you touch it, and with just your finger, no pen, you just touch it and it talks back to you. It's touch sensitive and audio. The Tiger and Bosser folks, View Plus, also make one that's similar to this. They don't have the same range of materials. It's called Iveo, I-V-E-O. They don't have a wide range of materials to go with it, but it is also tactile and audio. This is the new TTT, which is called the T3. And the other thing that the TTT did was the SAL material, Sally Mangold's Braille instructional program. You could put those on there, and when you went across the line and it said, find the one that's different on this line, and you touched it, it said, gave you feedback about whether you touched the right one or not. The SAL materials are being redeveloped by Exceptional Teaching, and will work on the new T3 that's in the process of being developed. It's actually being tested right now to see if it's what kids need. So that's another audio tactile thing. For our kids, having something that's audio and tactile is so helpful, because you can get so much more information than you can get physically on paper. You've got reams and reams of paper for the periodic table of elements, for instance. It takes a whole notebook to put down all the information about the atomic weights and the abbreviation and what the abbreviation means. It takes a whole notebook to do that. When you have tactile audio, you don't need that much space, and the student can get the information so much more quickly. This is a pen friend, and it's similar to the Echo Pen kinds of things, and it was actually developed in the UK for reading labels on medicine bottles. However, it'll read a label on whatever you put a label on. You record what it is, and then when you go back to touch it, it speaks, and it tells you what that label what is in that container, or what is on that particular page. If you use it for identifying things that are on a page, for instance, if you use it for identifying labels on a diagram, a tactile graphic. It's really sort of a fun little tool. This is another tactile audio thing. See, they're getting to be more and more out there, which is great. It's interesting how there's skeletons everywhere, and it's not even Halloween. This particular one is made by a company in the Netherlands called Thinkable. And this is part of a suite of materials called the Design Suite. It has software called Tactile View. Then it has a rubber backing, a rubber mat, and you can do all kinds of graphic drawing with that rubber mat, but it also has a little camera that you put on it. So whatever it is you draw, you can then turn around and send that to your embosser and have a Braille copy of what you've drawn. So you can have a blank grid to make a graph. Student can plot that graph. You can then send that because you connect it to a laptop or a computer of any kind, that you can then send that directly to your embosser, and the student can see the graph they've just done, or they can turn it in for homework or whatever. So this is a really neat system. Not cheap, but it's a really neat system. There's also a new printer out, and it's not audio, but it is tactile, and it's very, very quick. If you, for instance, used Duxbury or Braille 2000 or whatever your Braille translation program was, and did a worksheet, a handout on that, you just send it right through, and it uses a thermal process similar to a capsule machine. It's a lot cleaner and a lot less puffy. It's not black ink, so it's not carbon based, so it doesn't get all over your hands in the process of looking at things. But anyway, it's a brand new printer out of Japan that's just come into the States. But that's another way that you can get an immediate graphic. Okay, being selective is hard, because when a teacher comes and says, I need this stack of biology diagrams by tomorrow or by Friday or whatever it is in a big hurry, it's hard to say, well, I can't do them all. That's just it. So one of the ways to deal with having more stuff than can possibly fit in the amount of time that you have available is to ask that the teacher prioritize the graphics that they think they need the most, or they think they need first. And once they go through and prioritize, it's interesting how they say, you know what, we'll probably be okay without this one and this one. And so your list gets down a little bit further. And again, think about those adaptables. Is there something in your district already, maybe in your maybe in a neighboring district, that will help you provide what that student needs without you spending hours and hours and hours producing it? I remember that you personally are the expert about the students' accessible materials. You're the one who knows what they need and what they don't need. So try and factor that in when somebody comes and says, I need these 8 diagrams right away. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But you're the expert on that, and don't forget that in the process of saying, well, we can do these, but I think this one is covered by whatever it is, so that you can keep that manageable. You can still provide what the student needs as quickly as you can possibly get it done for them, hopefully on time, but also not necessarily be stuck with something that the teacher thinks that you need that isn't going to make any sense to the student. Always go back to the decision tree and think about what's the best way to get this information to the student. The decision tree is in the guidelines and standards for tactile graphics. It's in chapter 2, and it sort of helps you think through the process of, is this the best way for the student to get the information? Is there another way that might help the student understand this a little better? maybe a description, or maybe a graphic and a description, or maybe they don't need the information at all. Maybe there's another way for them to get the information in a way that's going to be more meaningful. Also, don't forget to pay careful attention to the image and what it is that the image is asking the student to do. What is it the student's supposed to learn from this image that you're supposed to make into a tactile graphic? What is it they're supposed to do with it? That'll help you know whether it needs to be a tactile graphic or not. So I have to encourage invested staff. I have to share with you a story. Donna McNear was a teacher of the visually impaired. She still is. She, like me, she'll never retire, I guess, in Minnesota. And Donna has this great idea. And so what she does at the beginning of school is she rounds up a little gift bag, a nice gift bag, and puts a bunch of stuff in there that will help the classroom teacher or the parapro in the classroom or anybody else that she can find to make graphics for the student on the spot. And she goes into the classroom and meets with the teachers before school starts and says, oh, here, I brought you this, and these are all the things that you're going to need to make graphics and blah, 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 blah. And she just goes through this whole thing about how she's gifted them this great treasure. And she never asked them if they wanted to do graphics for the students, but she said it works 100% of the time. And it's just funny hearing her tell the story about how she goes in and says, here's all your treasures. But if you provide things in the classroom, it's easy for the people who are around your student all day when you're not there, if you're itinerant, it's easy for them to be able to do a real quick graphic, a real quick, simple graphic. And especially with things like the Draftsman and the Sketchpad, the Easy Sketchpad, and also the Sensational Blackboard. It's real easy to make a quick graphic on the spot. The other thing that I think is really important, you know how going to get your pencil box. We used to call them pencil boxes when I was a kid. I'm not sure what they're called now, but I see them in all the office supply stores. The little plastic boxes that are cute that kids get all their new stuff in. You know, they put their compass in there. Protractor in there if they're at that level. They put pencils, they put wild erasers, they put thumb drives, they put all kinds of little school supplies in their box, and they have it in their backpack when they go to school on the first day. Well, why is it that we aren't helping blind kids have one of those? And if a kid is a tactile reader, then why don't we give them one that has the tools that would allow them to do something in making a graphic, because they're going to have to do it. We talked about those standards. They're going to have to produce a graph. They're going to have to produce hard copy stuff very often. So having the students have their own pencil box, I think, is a great idea. And the last thing about that is that when you take your little gift bag in and maybe take the pencil box and show them that this is what my student's going to bring to school, bring brownies. That always works. So you want to always make sure that you have honored those teachers who are busy in the classroom doing the very best they can to provide what materials they can provide for your student. So again, we talked about being prepared, thinking about adaptables, embracing technology, being selective in the graphics that you try to manage. Same thing with worksheets, same thing with any kinds of materials that you're being asked to do. And encourage invested staff, encourage other people to help with all of this graphic making stuff. Okay, so do we have questions?
Or any new ones in the chat, but we'll give people a chance. Remember, you can type in the chat or you can raise your hand if you would like the microphone.
I'd like to know what kind of challenges you usually have in schools for getting materials done as quickly as possible.
Ooh, we have a hand. So Hallie, I'm going to allow you to talk, so you should be able to have your
Okay.
microphone.
Hi.
There we go.
Hi, Hallie.
Hi, I'm Hallie Zitlow. I am a teacher of the visually impaired in Hillsborough. We often get like a lot of maps. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's better.
Okay. I'll hold my mic closer to my face.
Okay.
We often get a lot of maps in the middle school level.
Right.
There's just like tiny changes to each of them. And so, making a map in a timely manner where we can like present all of the different, because one map may show like the what's produced in that area, and then another map may show like all of the rivers in that area.
Right.
And so, I mean,
Well, and that's part
multiple maps, but
yeah. Well, that's part of the being prepared thing. If you know that a student's going to be studying a certain region, maybe this year they're studying Brazil, whatever it is, then if you have the outline maps for that, if you've pre-made those outline maps, then you can quickly go in and put the rivers in, or put in point symbols or labels for what the export products are, where the oil wells are, where the different crops are. But being prepared by go ahead and have the outline maps will let you do that. The other thing is that if you have one master map and it's not so busy that the Braille reader can't sort it out because everything's too close together, that's a great time to be using a sticky note kind of situation. So you could add where those products are, or you could add or subtract cities if it needs to know, like which cities are there, or which exports there are, whatever they are. But you could do that with sticky notes onto the one master map that you have. So if there's a way to make something that's a master that's going to have most of the information that you need, and then add that in some way, that's a great way to do it. Also, another way to do that is if you use a piece of metal, like a cookie sheet is a good example. And use magnetic labels or magnetic sticky things, magnetic point symbols. That is another way to do it. And you can buy sheets or rolls of magnetic, it was like a plastic kind of a thing to make those. You can buy those in craft stores to make that. Yeah. So I would encourage you to try and come up with a master that has at least some of the information, and then embellish that with as often as you possibly can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then we had two people pointing out, that the hardest thing is the last minute request from teachers, but then also convincing those teachers that the modifications you've made still present the needed learning or targeted content.
It is really hard to convince them about that sometimes. You just have to remember you're the one with the degree in teaching blind kids, not them. And that one of the reasons when the decision tree was written, when the guidelines and standards were written, one of the reasons those standards were actually written down was because people very often need that kind of backup. A classroom teacher may decide that the student needs absolutely everything that's on a print map. They need to have it in Braille on the Braille map, when in fact, it's more information than they can possibly manage. Or it could be that you've pulled some of that information off the map and put it in text form, put it in the key, or put it in a transcriber's note, or put it in a supplement kind of a thing, like the map of the United States, for instance. And I was talking about that if you have a supplement that says what the postal abbreviation is, the name of the state, the capital, whatever other information, so that the kid can look it up. They don't have to find it on the map. They can actually look it up in the book. But you're the one with the degree in blindness. And you can I've had teachers that just absolutely weren't gonna cooperate. They weren't happy about having a kid in their classroom. They did not want a kid with special needs in their classroom, and they were just going to argue about whatever. And sometimes you have to get an administrator involved in that, which is really frustrating when you have to do that. But yeah, it's hard. Can you give me some more information about what the situation is? Like, what was it that the teacher was not happy about?
So Janet, if you'd like to speak, I can give you the microphone.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. You know, unfortunately, over the years, this has happened. And we had a very tough situation this past year where it was some content that I went up to the teacher. I said, look, I'm not a science teacher. I don't happen to know the answers to this, but if you want me to, I'm going to have to give the student this information in text form. And she just kept insisting that it be in graphic form. And I guess I out-timed her because I kept insisting that there was no way it could be put into tactile form. And then it turned out that it really wasn't all that significant. It was just the activity for the other day.
Yeah. And you're going to come across some teachers that are just absolutely not willing to make the kind of accommodations they need to make so that your student has accessible materials. And you know, the best thing you can do is say, I'll be glad to give you the standards for doing tactile graphics, and you know, give them the decision tree. You know, this is not something that makes sense to the student. A perfect example of that is anything that requires visual discrimination. The Escher diagrams, for instance, there actually have been some of those on, and it has to do with tessellation, some of them on standardized tests, on state tests. But that's not something that's very easily understandable for a tactile reader. Doesn't make any sense. Things that that involve perspective, for instance, that those don't make sense as tactile graphics to a tactile reader. And there are some teachers that are just not gonna cooperate. And I wish I could tell you what a good answer to that is. But if you provide them with some materials that say, here's some documentation for why this does not make sense for a kid who's a tactile reader, and they're probably not going to read it, but at least you can say, here it is. And it's written down as standards, so that I actually had to tell someone that I said, well, you know, it was someone who had asked for some Braille production. And I said, well, this does not meet standards. Well, they insisted this is how they wanted it done. And I said, okay, I just need for you to know, I'm willing to do it your way, but I just need for you to know that it's substandard. And if you want me to do it substandard, I will do that. And they sort of went, oh, oh, and they sort of backed off and said, okay, well, do it however the standards say you should do it. But there are times when you're just going to lose that argument, and the kid is going to not be able to understand what you did. It's not going to make any sense, and you're going to have to, on the side, be able to give the kid some verbal information about it, a description about it.
I'm curious, Lucia, if you've ever, so in a situation like that, would you consider giving the student, you know, what we're saying, the one that meets standards and the substandard version, and having the teacher see, you know, look at how much easier the student is able to interpret the one that meets standards compared to the one that's substandard? Is that anything you would ever recommend doing?
Yeah. If you and especially when a description makes more sense. And speaking of descriptions, on the Diagram Center website, diagramcenter.org, there is a link to a whole set of information about how you do descriptions for really confusing diagrams, for diagrams that are not going to make any sense as tactile graphics. So that helps you to know how to write a good description so it'll make sense for the kid. But it very often giving them a description of that content will make sense when in fact the diagram won't. And yeah, there are times when you need to do that and give them both. And if you can safely have the show that to the, have the teacher observe the student dealing with that. Observe the student not making any sense out of the tactographic. It's very hard when you get into a battle with a teacher about what the student needs when you're the specialist. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
I think that, yeah, Janet was saying she loved the decision tree, but Janet, if there was anything else you wanted to add, or? Okay. Oh. I was gonna try. Oh.
Sorry, no, nothing.
No? Okay. All right. Okay. So it looks like we don't have any other questions unless you wanted to ask for any more follow-up, Lucia. That's up to you.
Okay. I just want to say thank you for your time, your contribution to the success of students. They are lucky to have you, and I'm sure they're probably grateful to have you. I did have some students who weren't grateful to have me. They hated to see me come in that door. But your commitment to students is so important, and I congratulate you for having that. If you have additional questions, you are welcome to email me and ask about whatever it is that you are trying to get resolved. I'll be glad to help out with that. If there are any questions about any of the stuff that I talked about today, the equipment, the techniques, the materials, any of that, you're certainly welcome to email me. And once you go back and look at it and go, what was she talking about? And you're interested and you want to know, you're welcome to email me. I also have a website that has a bunch of how-to. It's mostly how to do the different techniques. And I try to it's in the process, it's under construction again, remodeling, I guess is a better word. So I'm not sure what it looks like today. I'll have to go and check it out. But I very often, if there are new products that I think are useful in relation to tactographics, I usually put a note on the main first page with a link so that you can look at what these products are. But do contact me if you need to do. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Lucia. Your presentations, I feel like, are so practical and just so helpful, and all the different resources that you share, so people can just kind of pick and choose whatever works best for them and their student in that situation.
Right. Yeah, and that is how it works. Every student is different, every classroom and every teacher. That when you have kids that are included in regular classrooms, everyone is different, and some of them are excited about their little gift bag full of stuff so they can make their own tactographics, and some of them are going, oh, give me a break, I'm not doing this, so yeah, they're all different. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I really appreciate all the different information that you shared, and I know our teachers did too. There's lots of comments in the chat about thank you so much. Always learn a lot and new tricks. So yeah, I know our participants definitely benefited from this. All right, so I am going to share my screen again. Okay. All right, so as usual, we're getting to the end of the webinar. So we have our 4 questions from our evaluation. This is always the same form. So if you've been to this form before, you might have that link bookmarked. But again, that link is always on our website, on our events page. And our bit.ly is FIMC-VI. And there's also the QR code there. And Hallie yesterday was asking about, well, so the evaluations are anonymous, And so I thought with our giveaway that we're planning, so we wanted to give people giveaways if they did the evaluation for us. And I thought there was a way that I could kind of on the back end get contact information, but that's only if it's through constant contact. So I think that's where my mind was when I had that idea. So we're not going to do the giveaways. We're still doing that, but we're not going to do it based on evaluation. We're going to do that based on just who participated. So 3 people from the 5 sessions that we had will be chosen for the giveaways. I'll email you early next week with your options of what you can pick from. But and there will be no repeats. So if you were like one of those 3 random people from one session, you're not going to get picked, you know, for another session. So that means 15 people. So you all have some pretty good odds here of getting chosen for that giveaway. So, but yeah, we still do appreciate you doing the evaluation form because that is required from the Florida Department of Education. And our closing code. So you have your opening code. Now the closing code is success. Success. I'll type that in the chat. All right, so when you go to this form, you're going to put in that opening and closing code, fill it out, and then you will receive a certificate with this webinar title and the points that you earned for this. And you can either provide that to your district to get that in-service credit or give it to aphb or AP if that's what you're looking for. But our link here, and like I said yesterday, so if you accessed this form last week, it has since been changed. So don't use whatever, if you bookmark something from last week, that's not the correct form anymore. You want to make sure you're using the updated one, which is on our event site, on our event page, and with the new bit.ly of FIMC-CE. And so we are still doing the quizzes. I do not have the quiz up yet for this session. So if you've been going on Canvas to get the up to additional 2 in-service points, I don't have that quiz posted yet. So wait for that. That will probably be early next week. And let's see. So that's the end of this webinar series, but we do have 3 different webinars coming up in this month. We have a virtual brainstorming session, so all about virtual learning. We have one on the Florida Low Vision Initiative, and then our information and update series that we do every year. The first one will be this month as well. So if you go to our events page, you'll see all of those on there. And so Janet, the closing code was success. And yeah, we do record all of our sessions. So if you ever need to go back and look anything up, the recording will be posted to our website by the end of this week. And so please contact us if you need anything. We've got our website here and our phone numbers, or you can email me. My email is eanderson@fimcvi.org. I'll put that in the chat. And you would contact me if you want to be added to our Canvas site, which is for people who are in Florida serving adults or students with visual impairment. So that's it for today. So thank you again all so much.